Hello, Opening Pathways viewers. It's Tamala Noble here again with another episode, and today I'm excited to bring you Steve Ricks. I was introduced to Steve lately, and I love what he's doing, and you will too. He calls himself the Prophet of Play. He is the CEO of Play Lab. We'll learn a little bit about that today, but we're going to learn a lot more about Steve. Steve, welcome to Opening Pathways.
Tom, thank you so much for having me. I've been excited ever since you said this is an opportunity for us, and I'm looking forward to the stories we get to share and how that may help people.
Yes, so welcome here. I want to start at the beginning. What was it that sparked your first idea to start Play Lab? And I'd love for you to tell a little bit about what it is.
Sure. Um, I guess it's kind of a two-part answer because about 12, 13 years ago, through some personal experiences that I had, I began experimenting with play in my own life, found that it was so useful. I opened a small boutique coaching and consulting firm, really just a shop of one, and occasionally I'd have some administrative help. But I coached over 1,100 people, and with amazing results. And when I thought about it, I kept having this little, what'd you call it? The guy on your shoulder or the little voice in your head saying, you can do more. And then somebody came up to me and said, you should do more. I was like, all right, what does that look like? Because coaching individuals through play was a path that I thought I'd just do the rest of my life. But now, the last 3 years, Play Lab evolved out of that coaching practice to take all the exciting and interesting things that people learned and experienced and compartmentalize them in a way that it's palatable for the corporate entities of the world to say, this can be really useful to the primary mandate of a business, which is profit. However, it can also be wildly useful in tending to the needs of humans in the workplace, which I think you and I share a similar view that on the report card, corporations aren't doing real well in that department. Yeah. So Play Lab is, in fact, a company designed to teach tomorrow's leaders, the young people, today, how to address the future of work. And we do it by giving them a host of acquired soft skills. And it's not in a book that we teach because no two people are alike. So by teaching them how to curate their own experiments with playfulness and fun in actual work settings, they will discover and develop tools that are naturally bent to who they are. One of the biggest problems at work is we got, I always get that saying wrong, round pegs and square holes, right? Did I say that right? No, I said it wrong. But you get the point. So in a nutshell, yeah, we want to make happy, playful humans all across the world. We spend so much time and effort in the working environment, and so few people have any kind of meaningful satisfaction from it. We're just crazy enough to think that we can change that trajectory.
Yeah, I love this, Steve, and viewers. Steve has shared a little bit of this with me, and some of you know that I spent a lot of time in HR and certainly with big customer service centers and in a lot of corporations. And what I love about this is there's an application to make it fun, and yet the information that comes out. And so if you are an employee, you want to talk to your business owners about looking into this. And if you're an employer with a business, you definitely need to take a look at this model because it's not just using play to play. There's a lot of serious smarts that come out of it and directional data. Steve, before we dive into you, which is where we're going next, I'd love for you to share with the viewers the story about the two kids on the beach, please.
Yes, I probably should have brought a visual aid. But when I first moved to Hawaii, end of 2013-ish, November, I was in a really dark place. When I reflect on the 60 years I've been alive, I think my first 3 to 6 months here were probably the most counterproductive, lifeless, and I'd never said I quit, but all my actions said I quit. And the background to how I got here, the intent was always to move here. When I retired, that's what I said when I was 21, and I've long since changed my view on productivity in the workplace and my retirement. But I ended up here at 47 because I went through a really hard divorce, one I did not expect. And if we put a little asterisk by it that says it was the second one, when I really thought I was getting it right, that was a real heavy thing. But that's not the whole story. The heaviness came from my 20s, 30s, and halfway through my 40s, having come so close on a number of occasions to real meaningful, I hate the word success, but manifestation of things that I had intended to make happen. And in every case, I not only did not manifest, I fell short. I had a mortgage business that we were taking public. And about the time the mortgage and real estate markets collapsed back in the late '08, '09 area, um, I had to file a $7.5 million bankruptcy and hand the keys to 27 different real estate properties that I had interest in back to the note holders. That wasn't fun. But I'm resilient, right? This is what I'm saying back then. So I went and was selected to be, of all things, the CEO of a publicly traded gold mining company. I was super excited about it. I knew nothing about gold mining. And for your listeners, I think one of the things I always like to remind them is there are games within games, right? And in the public markets, I had a fair understanding of it because we were getting ready to take our mortgage company public. And I understood the principles of business. So I said yes. Well, we grew it. The share price went from a penny or two to almost $1.40, something like that. I had 30 million shares. Now hmm, I'm not into money. I guess that's the way to say it. Like, I'm not driven by chasing money. But in the back of my head, I was like, man, you do this right, and you're going to have the freedom to use those assets in wonderful ways. And I got, the company got hostily acquired. Myself and the chairman and the CFO were all booted, fired, I guess, asked to leave. And, it wasn't the worst thing in the world. It was a good severance. But in my mind, the real loss came when a year later, the stock was zero and they bankrupted the company. Add to that, I said no to Bitcoin at $1 a Bitcoin. And I said no to one of the first investors for a little company called Uber. And in my head, by the time I got here, I really did feel like my time had come and gone. And man, every time I tell this story, I get so excited. And two little kids came up to me on the beach because I'd spent about 90 days on the beach doing nothing, not like thinking of solutions, just like a broken record, replaying everything that had happened in my life to that point that was not what I would call success stories. And these two kids, maybe 4, 5, 6 years old, hey, mister, do you want to play? Well, it all happened in a millisecond, Tom, because, their energy was so irresistible. I couldn't bring myself to be a jackass and say no, even though that's what I felt. And so we played. I built a little sand castle. We went and danced in the waves. And then they and their parents went off. But something remained. And it may be the single most profound observation of my life ever, because it's changed the course of my life. And here's what remained. Yes, the sandcastle was still there, but this guy with 90 straight days of oh, poor me, not cracking a smile, not putting any effort into my life, almost waving the white flag of surrender. I felt this palpitation in my heart, and my palms were sweaty. my cheekbones were up. I was smiling and I was thinking like productive thoughts. So I walked back to the house I'd rented up on Sunset Beach, pulled open a journal, and I wrote these words: if play could change my deeply unproductive state on instant and almost like on accident, what would happen if I experimented with play, with fun, and the properties that lie within them for every challenge the rest of my life? Whether it's food and weight and money and relationships, anything. And of course, that then bled over into what about experimenting with play in the human transformation process by being a coach? So I guess it's now 13 years ago. I wrote a book, and on the cover of the book, there's a sandcastle in homage to those two kids. Yeah, two roads diverge. And on that day, I took the one less traveled. Some of my friends said, Steve, it's okay you went to Hawaii, when I told them about starting this business. But they're like, there's just no proven data. Don't waste your time. And Clay was the irresistible friend calling me night and day. And to this day, still does that.
Yeah, I tell Steve a lot is that fortune doesn't stop chasing him, and Play Lab is doing real well. So, all right, we're going to dig into you now.
Mhm.
I want to know how you're fundamentally different from the person who started Play Lab. What has changed about Steve?
That is a fantastic question. A lot of things. I'm going to just give a few that come top of mind. For the longest period in my life, well, really up until Play Lab, I felt like in the arena of productivity or work or professional aspect of Steve, I could outwork anyone. And there may be some truth to that statement because I have quite a compelling work ethic. I always have. However, what I realized is part of that was because of my internal pace. And I, a few years ago, met a coach from India. For those of you out there who are coaches, make sure you still get a coach. Like I still get coached to this day. And he was a deep contemplative thinking coach. I was like, that's a mouthful. Is that just another way of saying meditation? He said, no. I said, okay, I'm all ears. And he said, no, you're not. You need to shut up and be still. That was like, and I'm very energized today, as I always am when I do these things. But the point is, this high level of enthusiasm or chargedness was the only speed I had. Even when I was exercising empathy for someone, I did it at a high rate of speed, which isn't really empathy. And I don't know if it's the biggest thing, but one of the biggest things I've learned is it's a cliche, but to stop and smell the roses, like have intentional pace to my life. Don't just go, 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 go. And that's been really good for me because sometimes, right now, it's about once a month, I turn all electronic devices off and I practice. I think it's an art form. I practice the art of silence. I don't take any calls. I don't have music on. I don't interact. I'm just still mentally. I may be physical, walking around, going for a swim, but purposefully have nothing to do but not think. And that's been really good for me. Another part of Steve that's changed a lot is self-love. I think it's probably safe to say, and I've never like given it a measurement, but pre-beach story, I think I had some ideas of what self-love was. And back then I probably would have assessed that I was doing okay. when I compare that to the behaviors today and the intentionality around really adoring self, even saying that occasionally is still foreign to me. I grew up in an environment where I was taught that you take care of everyone else first. And that was deeply ingrained in me. So, and that self love has been absolutely essential because in the time it's taken to develop and now begin to actually realize the potential of PlayLab, every company I ever had, I've sold it, I buried it, or just walked away in 5 years or less. And now I'm at this little journey for 13 plus years. So it's been important to have that self love
Yeah.
because no matter how one may appear to be accomplished, that little thing called imposter syndrome can show up anywhere at any time.
Steve, tell me this. What values have guided you from the start?
I play that or from my life,
Yes, yes.
both. Okay. Um, I don't know that I actually conscientiously, and I'm not sure how many young people do, say, here's what I value, right? It unfolds because of the culture and the environment. The number one thing I value, I think it will always be this way, is to be a free thinker and to encourage everyone else to do the same. The further we get into this experiment called humans, and the more that it is bombarded with interest groups and technologies and communication tools that amplify and sometimes speed the rate at which messages get around and how we live and change, right? Um, Being in that sense of thinking, I think it's super helpful. So the value is to be open minded. Like at 60 years old, I would be shocked if over the next 40, 50 years, whatever it is, if I don't adapt new ideas, if I don't introduce to myself new thinking. So certainly I value that. Um, when I left organized religion, I bought a book by Adam Grant. Maybe you've heard of it, called Think Again. And it was wonderfully useful to just say, all right, what was I given versus what did I accept? Because there's a lot of stuff running around in the head that I never consciously worked through it. So I definitely value that. The other two things that just come to mind is the freedom to be who I am all the time. So much of my life, up until maybe 30, 35, I was partially Steve, and I was on any given day a fractional, fragmented presentation of what I thought people might want me to be or what I needed them to think me to be to protect my own sense of insecurities. And now I feel really comfortable in my own skin, and I'm very intentional in surrounding myself with people who love that value because it removes judgment and it creates freedom for just innovation to go right along with my first value. I'd say one more. I love life. I don't want to say I've been through it because everybody's been through it. They get to define what that is. I just know that the least expensive thing I can do every day is put a smile on my face and go headstrong into whatever comes my way.
Yeah.
There are a lot harder ways to approach it, but those would be probably.
I
I don't
love
think
that.
he's asked me that question in a long time.
Yeah, I love it. I love this idea of being who we are. I had a agreement with myself a long time ago. Not only is it much easier to be who I am, but they're going to find out eventually anyway, so I might as
That's
well put
right.
it out there from the beginning. Tell me this,
Right.
Steve. How has your relationship with risk changed as you've gone through this journey?
That's a great question too. You're full of great questions. Um, Interesting because I was brought up in a split home. My dad did well for himself. My mom not so much. And in those formulative years, when you start thinking about money and time differently, I wasn't getting a very good model of anything. By 24, and I graduated from college at 21 ish, I had $60,000 in credit card debt. Um, so I very quickly came to understand that the biggest risk I can take on any given day is to put myself in situations knowingly that are not capable of meeting an obligation. So when I think about risk, like with Play Lab, it's really been a grassroots initiative. I mean, when I was the CEO of the mining company, we went on the money raising trail and get big equity firms and venture capital and blah 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 to make big check writing and some private investors. But with Play Lab, we have 13 investors. They're all my friends. We have 5 advisory board members, all but one of them were my friends. The fifth one was introduced to me. And so when I think about risk, I don't necessarily put it in the bucket of money. I put it in the bucket of time. It's the only thing I can't get back. I've lost enough money to know there's plenty more to go be made or to be earned, so I'm not worried about that at all. At times, I, and this is part of one of my values since Play Lab, is a tribal approach to leadership. So while I am the majority shareholder of the company, all 3 of my partners have an equal vote with me, and our 5 advisory board members have a collective vote of 1 if there's ever a need to use voting. Much to my pleasure, we have never done anything that we didn't all agree.
That's
And that's
great.
not because I got a whole bunch of yes men and women around me. Like I do just the opposite. So the risk for me is not fulfilling my commitment to myself to make a difference in the world. That's the way I measure risk today. So every day I go and Play Lab is, not on a fast or not a fast, but a reasonable growth curve. Um, that would be an area of risk I would be bringing to the table. This is the first year that we will generate income, maybe profit. And the second risk that comes to mind is relational risk. And I think to some degree they go hand in hand, but I love that my friends are my investors. Um, at the mining company, we had an investment relation firm, which your listeners may be aware of that kind of stuff. Outside people to handle all those investor questions. I call all 13 of our investors every month. Some of them I play golf with, some I have lunch with, some don't live here, but I call them and tell them what's going on. Not out of obligation, as much as a sense of sharing in the joy. Because when we took investor money, they said, this isn't to put your money in and you believe in Steve and the idea, and we'll see you later. We have minimum requirements of each of our investors to keep in the loop as to what's going on and to help spread that word. So, in that sense, risk is different.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me this, Steve. How do you recognize when fear is information and not a stop sign?
Could you ask that a different way so I can wrap my head around that?
How do you recognize when fear is just giving you information and not a stop sign?
Okay, so I I don't know, 20 years ago, whenever emotional intelligence, maybe it's 30 years now, when the Harvard Business Press put out emotional intelligence and then 2.0, all of a sudden I felt like there was a place for me in the world because I am not in the slightest way an analytical person by default. Now, after 40 years of business, you put yourself in situations where you have to understand principles of analysis. However, I am a gut feeling guy. So that's an interesting question. And I think, yeah, it's probably for some frustrating to hear this, but I just trust those neuron receptors, I think they're what they're called, in the colon. There's 30,000 of them, second largest set of receptors aside from the brain. I just really have come to trust that because I've had so many experiences in my life that on the scale of 1 to 10, one being mundane to flatline and 10 being off the chart, um, I have a lot of chart topping moments. And some of them were not the chart of success, right? And you remember these things. And so I'm really given to emotional intelligence. So if I do feel I'm pumping the brakes at any level, um, on a personal note, I have 12 people who have been given permission, day or night, any day of the year, to intervene in my life if they feel anything is off. And I'm really grateful to have those people. I've known most of them for over a decade. And then we have the advisory board and the partners. So moving with a plan that has the ability to pivot based on information, super important. And I don't know that honestly I'm afraid of much of anything right now.
Yeah, I love it.
And I don't say that like in a I say that in a conscious, aware way, right? Like there's plenty of things that could stop any company from achieving its goal. Um, Certainly one that says play and work are the same has probably put a few extra hurdles, right? And we work real hard in how we message who we are. But yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. I'm not afraid.
I've learned in this life of mine that fear is simply an opportunity for growth.
Mm,
Tell me
yeah,
this, Steve. What
I like
impact are
that.
you most proud of? Not publicly, not professionally, but personally.
In my own life,
Yeah.
um, two things. My kids were 9 and 6 when mom and dad divorced of a very difficult time. My daughter, a few years later, decided she hated all men, starting with me, and I didn't get to talk to her at all by her choice, supported by her and by myself and her mom for 2.5 years. Um, and I remember when she reached out and said, "All right, we need to talk." I was like, I hope this isn't an extension on the 2.5 years, but it was a very sweet reconciliation. Um, and my kids are so uniquely different, and they're in their early 30s. They, in their own ways, make wonderful contributions to the world and to me personally. And there was a point where it's like, I just didn't feel a depth of a relationship with them because my movement to leave the family, they stay with mom, and that intrinsically has a weighted value. So I had these ideas going in my head. I have what I would call a like an 11 out of 10 relationship with both my children. Um, as both of us, or as all of us would quantify value. And that means the world to me because I didn't really have that growing up. Secondly, and this is an easy one, there have been a million, not a million, that's an expression. There have been a whole bunch of times where I could have shut down my will to progress towards a goal that I knew I needed to get, and just put it in autopilot mode, right? Go get a half decent paying job as a corporate leader, find a new relationship, and just zone out of potentiality. I love that I never quit, and I won't.
Yeah. So tell me this, Steve, what have you learned about trust?
Love this question. Well, there's two aspects to that. In my mind, there's how aligned am I with myself, and when I'm aligned with myself, that means I'm loving myself. And where there is perfect love, there's no need for trust. And because we're all imperfect as it relates to the monitoring of myself or just growing, I write down goals every year for myself personally. I share it with a few friends. And then at the end of the year, we talk about what worked, what didn't. And I've implemented these just simple, I wouldn't call them rituals, but practices that remind me to keep doing on a daily basis the things that have worked, and the things that don't are the things that I go experiment with play, because I want to be able to lean into my behaviors as useful. That's a new test coming up here as it relates to my social status. I've been single for a long time, and my girlfriend is moving here from Europe in just a couple of weeks. I haven't shared space with someone in 10 years. I may have forgotten. So there's a conscious level of being worthy of the trust that she's giving me by coming halfway around the world, which then leads to the second aspect of trust. I was the guy who always thought the best of people, and therefore was the recipient of several economic scams back in my 20s, and a handful of emotional, I wouldn't call them scams, but emotionally depleted experiences by choosing to believe something that I never verified. I don't remember if it was Covey, but someone wrote the book, The Speed of Trust. And it just made so much sense to me, Tom. I'm going to give you all my trust day one. And I know the things I'm looking for to grow, to give, to expand. And I know the things that really I don't want anything to do with or are not for me. And so it's just welcome to my tribe. Let's go. And you hear part of it in the ear, the way people talk to you, the words they choose. It's not hard. So, yeah, everybody gets my trust until something is done that makes me retract a portion of it and either have a conversation or remove myself from the relationship. And I haven't had to remove myself from a relationship in a while now, because I'm more clear than ever, always room for more clarity, but what I want in my life.
Yeah. Steve, tell me this. What does legacy mean to you at this
A
stage of life?
couple weekends ago, we were on the golf course over in Kauai, some of my buddies, and one of the guys said, well, hopefully I make it to 70. And he's reasonably healthy and he's only 55. And I said, well, I'm sure there's more possible for you. He said, nah, you know, I've worked a job, I saved some money. What's left, my kids will get when I'm gone. And life was okay. that brought up a whole discussion around what's legacy, what do we leave behind? And I don't remember who said it, but someone said to live my life in such a way that in my passing I could never be forgotten. I don't know about that because once I'm gone, I'm gone. I don't have a problem with it, but I think I want my legacy to be that ever my name comes up, they simply say he made a difference. Yeah.
I love
I don't need to be remembered. I don't need my name on buildings, and tombstones, all that kind of stuff. I just, I don't, I'm just insatiably drawn to touching people in a way that's useful for them. And sometimes I do it real well. Other times I miss. I take that feedback and adjust.
it's great. I have this question for you, Steve. If a very, very young Steve was listening to this podcast, what would you tell him?
Well, I've had this question posed to other people. I've never contemplated it myself because for a long time I've embraced the idea of an ounce of energy spent on regret, or I wish it was this instead of that, is an ounce of energy I'm not using to create something more meaningful in the future. So I would, what I would tell him or he would tell me. I'm sorry.
What you would tell him, a very young Steve, if he was watching this podcast?
Would tell him no matter how crazy the twists and turns in life are, no matter what you had hoped and dreamed, no matter what you had broken along the way, because you will break things, because that's Steve. It just goes and goes. I would simply tell him to, as quickly as possible, understand who he is, and then he can run like the wind.
Love it.
Took me a while to figure out who I was. Like answering it without, I'm a dad, I'm a business owner, I like this and that. Like, how would I describe Steve without telling you a thing about me? And when I figured that out, it's been a lot of fun.
Good, good, good. Steve, tell me this. What invitation would you leave the viewers with today after you've shared your story here today? What would be the invitation you would give to them?
Um, I've always felt good about this. I don't know if it will ever have to change because I get to choose. Um, Anytime I present anywhere in a public setting, I obviously, if asked to do so, give out contact information. But the one thing I would tell your listening audience is if they feel in any way, shape, or form that they would like their life to be more than what it is, better than what it is, or different from what it is, then let's have a 15-minute conversation. It's not a conversation to be their coach. Well, I coached a lot of people. I don't have the bandwidth to really do that anymore. It occurred to me the other day, it sounds funny saying it because I just don't feel older, but I have a lot of wisdom to share. And had it been shared with me at a younger age, things would have been different. Not good or bad, but certainly different. And seeing people who maybe don't have the same clarity of willpower or intention for the value of their own life, a 15-minute conversation, a few questions, I'm quite certain I can at least pose for them some curiosity and excitement about finding the more and the better and the different. So I guess I'm saying I'm going to be available to your listening audience whenever. And they can get me via email, text, and I don't know how you give that out, but so I give my phone number, but I tell people don't call me. I don't answer phone numbers I don't recognize. Text me.
That's great. So, Steve, the prophet of play, the CEO of Play Lab, how can we find you?
Let's play a game of hide and seek. No, I'm just kidding. Everything's a game, right? No, it's simple. On our website, which is experimentwithplay.com, just like it sounds, there's a contact form and an actual place to get on my calendar. And my email is steve at the same experimentwithplay.com. And last but not least, my cell number is 808-321-0729.
Wonderful. Steve, thank you for being on Opening Pathways today.
My pleasure. And I got to give props to you. These were really great questions. And I have a whole bunch of things I got to do later today, but I got to go write those questions down because now I'm curious how to play with those questions.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Thank you, Steve. And to my viewers, this is Tom Lenoble. I'll see you next time.